Okay, I'm not sure if I'm live. Yeah. All right, folks. Today is a different day. I just want to make sure that I am live now, that you can hear me. Let's see. If you guys can only see André today. Okay, let's do it. It's going to start. Okay, it's going to start. We're live for another. Let me just mute myself on the screen because I'm watching myself. So we're live here, folks, for another episode of Chá Pedagógico. And today we're going to start a little differently because my friend Rudy Maciello is not here, but he will be here. Okay, we promise he will do his best to be here to join me because we have a very important episode today. I think debunk myths about learning and how fast one can learn. So if you are new, Disal's YouTube channel, do it now. I'm going to give my good friend, my brother, Rudy Maciello, some time for him to join me because he has all the juicy bits, of this episode. Now, I'm kidding. We all have something to offer. But one of the things that you might be wondering, folks, and let me get my tea here, there are a lot of promises online when it comes to learning languages, right? So if you have joined us, if you are live and you can use the chat, let us know because we have something there for you to actually vote. We have a poll about how someone can learn our impressions, if that's okay. If you think intensive courses are actually efficient or not, if you think that you can learn very fast. Have you ever heard learn, be fluent, be proficient in English in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or sometimes months? But yeah, you get the general idea, right? Is that even possible? I'm really trying to get to the bottom of this. And of course, Rudy and I always look at the research and we always look at some examples to share with you. And by the way, today my tea is the one that Rudy doesn't like. So I'm drinking English breakfast, the dark black tea from England with a little bit of milk. Yeah, it's gross, I know, but I love it. I actually got really fond of it during my time in Bristol. So let me take a sip. So let's start, folks. Well, let me tell you something from experience. At different schools, institution where students could actually study one semester in a month. So that was the promise, right? So you do one semester in 1 month. You have classes every day for about, 3 to 4 hours a day, actually except Fridays. And then the whole month have from Monday to Thursday from, I think, 6:30 to 10 p.m. classes. And then that means you can actually skip that level because you just did it like all at once in 1 month. And then you join the next one. So let's say you're doing, pre-intermediate 1, right? And that it's usually pre-intermediate 1 and then intermediate 1 in the first semester. Then I also had the pleasure of making one such course for another accredited institution here to work with different groups for, probably a month. Paying the teachers since, and we had 4 groups at the literally like many hours a day. So that was even more intensive because we had 6 to 8 hours a day. It was like a full immersion course, and I had teachers as well. It was an amazing experience, but did they learn? Have they learned well? Share another experience that I had. So this one was 8 hours a day. I also help kids who had won a scholarship to go to the United States and spend a month there working on global competencies like leadership, I don't know, public speaking, communication skills, and things like that, right? And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, like one of the top experiences I had as a professional. We worked with 30 students per classroom, so we had a bunch of teachers working together. I helped design the entire course, but since we didn't have any books, so they had to use different materials. I'm pretty sure the kids, the teenagers, they learned, but have they learned effectively? This is the big question we're asking tonight. And I would love to check your thoughts on that. I don't know how many people are watching us, but if you are, please share. Can you learn effectively if you have many hours of class, probably every day or 4 times a week, or I don't know, more than twice a week? Or is it better for you to actually take things more slowly? Well, the answer is not easy. It depends. I think, when Rudy joins me, if he can, he will probably tell you that it depends on many factors. But usually what people are selling out there is not very effective for a couple of reasons, right? So one of the reasons is, yes, I mean, of course you can have intensive courses. Of course you can have as many classes as you want a day, a week. You can have as many hours as you want. If you can afford that, if you have time to do it, that's amazing. But usually you don't have time to do it. Usually you don't have time to dedicate to actually learning the language quite well. And usually you cannot keep up for a very long time. And that's probably the biggest challenge for most people. How long can you keep that up? And how effectively, how committed will you be for that time, taking all those hours, being exposed to a lot of classes every day? That's the main issue. So if you just take a lot of holiday courses or intensive courses for a very long time, you will definitely increase your exposure to the language. That's very, very true. But that doesn't mean that you will have the opportunity to use the language in, well, let's say effective ways. So you will take a lot of input, but the output will be lacking somehow. And I think if you realize that, then you can start asking more important questions to actually understand how the language learning process happens in the brain. Is it really as much as, receiving a lot of information, being exposed to a lot of information, or is it more about using and practicing the language by actually applying the information, the content that you have received, right? And I think people don't realize that. A lot of students are under the impression that if they increase the amount of contact, the amount of hours that they are using the language, that they are actually doing something with the language, that's enough. But how are you using the language, right? So a lot of people think that, well, if I am exposed to TV series, if I'm watching a lot of movies, if I'm listening to music every day, that's exposure. I'm getting a lot of language, a lot of input. But then why is it that a lot of people, most people who do that, don't learn? They don't actually make progress in the language because there's a very important ingredient that is missing. It's the output. How are you producing the language? Where are you using the language in meaningful, real ways? And you don't come across opportunities like that very easily. Does that make sense, folks? Think with me. It's kind of like going to the gym, if you think about it. Let's say you want to get fit very quickly, So you want to sign up. There's a local gym. You want to go to the gym every day, and you want to work out for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours every day. And you've never done it before in your life. Does that work? Does it even make sense for you to want to do something like that? Or will you probably get injured in the process, right? Do you think your muscles can handle the pressure, the load, right? Do you think that this will be the best way for you to get to, let's say, your goal, but also to keep your goal for many, many months to come, or even years, right? So you always have to analyze cost benefit. You always have to think about how those things work. Because I think, honestly, a lot of people are not aware that for you to learn different aspects of the language, like grammar, like skills, for you to be able to listen to someone and actually understand what they're saying, for you to be able to develop your oral fluency, you have to actually do those things, not just passively receive content information, or in other words, more technical words, receive a lot of input, because input is usually related to receptive skills, and receptive skills, they have to do with receiving information, and we receive information through reading and through listening, right? So we can listen to a lot of people, or we can listen to people talking in English every day. We can read a lot of texts every day. It doesn't mean that those things are going to help us necessarily with speaking and writing. So when it comes to actually using the language in productive ways, those things are not going to transfer, let's say, automatically to help you be a proficient user of the language. And production is that. So speaking and writing. So making use of the language that you received through input, through reading and listening, but in a way that you are creating the language as you go. So it's not just about understanding, comprehension. It's really about creation of the language, right? And so what can I use here to show you guys that intensive courses might actually be, well, I don't want to say a bad idea. I don't want you to have the impression that you should never sign up and start an intensive course. You can. I think for many people, maybe you had an interesting experience. Maybe you feel like it worked for you. Maybe you are proficient in English or whatever language today because you started with that idea first, and then you develop, and then at some point you realize that so that was a very interesting kickstart for me. I got into this intensive course. It was great. I learned a lot. I felt like it was amazing to be immersed, in the language, talking to people. Like every day I had to have a conversation with people, so that's great. But then I want you to reflect on what happened next, okay? What was it that you did after that? Were you able to keep the pace for a very long time? Or was that just like a kind of like a push, to boost your motivation, and then you kept going, but then you took a more, let's say, regular or normal course, if that makes any sense? So to show you how we can go about this, Rudy and I actually came up with some characters. So I wish he were here, but let's see if he'll manage to join me, okay? So we came up with some characters to illustrate what usually happens when you're faced with the horrible choice of having to say, I want to do this course or that course because I need to learn English as quickly as possible. So let's say we have this guy. His name is Jameson, okay? So let's call him Jameson. And let's say he wants to learn German. He wants to become fluent in German as quickly as possible. And he decides to have 2 classes a week, okay? So that's his thing. He can afford the classes. He has found an interesting course. I'm not telling you here if it's, with a native speaker or not. That doesn't matter here, whatever. He's going to do this course face-to-face, so he's actually going to the teacher, or the teacher's coming to him. They're going to be live together, and he's going to have classes twice a week, okay? So that's Jameson. How long do you think it will take for Jameson to be at the level he wants? Okay, so think about that. Then let's move to another character. I don't know how we came up with the names. Maybe you can figure it out. Let's call him Jack, okay? So Jack wants to take an intensive German course for 30 days, and Jack wants to study 2 hours a day. And he finds the course, he wants to do it, he can afford it, and he starts the course, okay? So Jameson, twice a week only. Jack, 2 hours a day for 30 days, okay? Probably not on the weekends, right? Jack has to rest on the weekends. And then let's think of Johnny. So we have Johnny. And Johnny, he wants to do the same thing. He wants to learn German as well. But he decides that he doesn't have a lot of time. So he wants to watch recorded lessons, okay? So he's going to do an asynchronous course. He's going to access a platform. He's going to watch a lot of recorded lessons, videos. He's going to do some quizzes. He's going to have access to different types of materials and all of that. But he will not be interacting with anyone live, okay? And finally, we have Maggie. So Maggie, she wants to do like Jameson. So she wants to have, 2 hours or something like that a week. But this time, Maggie wants to do it online. So she's not going to go anywhere. Nobody's coming to her. She's going to do this course online. So we have Jameson, we have Jack, we have Johnny, we have Maggie. I don't know if you remember their names. We tried to make the names easier for you, but who do you think is going to learn better, more effectively? So I'm actually looking for effective learning. So please write that in the chat. Share anything you want. I'll give you some time to think about this. Let's see if Rudy can join us. I'm still texting him, but maybe he's going to be later. But what do you think? Who's going to learn more effectively? Do you still remember the names? Well, we're going to analyze each one of those possibilities, and I'm going to try to tell you the ups and downs, the advantages and disadvantages of selecting each, because we believe that there is something there. There's a trend nowadays, I think. And this trend is that people are somehow, because they have no time, because they have to get results as quickly as possible, because they are looking for the best, let's say, cost-effective solution. So they're leaning towards usually the option where I can access a lot of recorded materials, right? I can join a platform. I don't have to be live with my teacher because, well, doesn't matter. And I will learn. And I think a lot of people are probably choosing that option. Is that option effective? Other people who might actually have more money, let's say, because it's usually more costly, right? So they manage to get, like Jack, they manage to get an intensive course and they do it for like a month, a couple of weeks, and that's it. because I don't know, I'm going to Disney with my kids. I'm going to speak at a conference in Miami or something like that. That's usually what students come to us with, right? That's what they say. So I'd say that the most popular options today, and I don't know if you folks agree with me, are, Jack's option, intensive German course, 30 days, 2 hours a day, or Johnny's, okay? Johnny's option, recorded asynchronous course, no live interaction. If I had to be very honest, and I am going to be very honest with you, according to what I believe in and Rudy believes in and the research that we did, those are usually the worst options, okay? Uh-oh. What do you mean the worst options? Well, for a couple of reasons, right? I think, and I can see some of your answers here in the chat now. Tasia and the kids' school, okay? So I think the guy that practices every day, but it all depends the methodology. Interesting, okay? So yes, I don't think it works. Okay, interesting. Well, let me tell you why those might not be the best options. First of all, if they are joining an intensive course, as long as they are able to dedicate fully to the course during the period in which they're taking the course, okay, they might actually get very interesting results very quickly, but then they are not able to keep up, right? So you cannot keep up. And I actually wrote an article about that, a blog post that I'm going to share with you. And then so I'm going to add to the chat box. There is a place where you can learn incredibly fast. I mean, faster than any other place on earth, apparently. But it's very, very exclusive. And I don't think, again, it's not for everyone. It's not for us mere mortals. This is for the military in the United States. So I wrote this blog post for my Learning Cosmos Post blog, which is high proficiency in weeks. It can be done, but not the way you think. And basically, I go over the research and I look at the program that they offer at a place that most of us have never heard of. It's the Department of Defense, so the Defense Department, and they have the Defense Language Institute. And they have the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center. This is the school for the military that they came up with. They created that school for the military in the 1940s because they had to get the soldiers, who were actually going to fight World War II, to learn as quickly as possible in a matter of weeks, because again, they were supposed to travel to a different country and engage in conversations with the locals, especially French, right? Because they were allies, right? Anyway, so as allies working together, they were able to communicate, but also they were supposed to intercept the enemy's messages. So a lot of Americans had to learn German as quickly as possible as well, so that they were able to, maybe get an advantage at war. And a lot of people here who study methodology may have heard something about the audiolingual method, right? So if you have, let us know in the chat box. So the audiolingual method became quite popular during those decades, especially in the 1950s, right? But because it was based on how the military, soldiers were trained to go to war. So they had to repeat a lot of things, and they received a lot of input. The first levels, they were actually done in their native language. So, if you're teaching French to American people, you would teach them in English first, and then at some point, the lesson would be mostly in French or in German or whatever language. And then that became quite popular in the 1950s. And even today, we have a lot of schools that use exactly, that's what Paulo is saying, a lot of schools that use the audiolingual method. Now, the interesting thing is that it might give you a very interesting advantage You might be able to learn faster when compared to other types of method. But again, how sustainable is that? Now, let me tell you how intense or intensive the course is at this language institute, the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, where they teach the military. So basically, first of all, you have to take a battery. So you have to take an aptitude test for you to join the language classes. Okay, so it's not for everybody. So if somebody is promising online that anyone can take an intensive course and in a matter of weeks can become proficient in whatever language, be careful. I mean, it's not anyone according to the center where they do it. They have been doing it for nearly a century, if you think about it, right? And they have a lot of research there. So it's not for everyone. So much that they have to apply what they call the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, the DLAB. And it's a very complicated exam. And it's actually, they use a made-up language. It's not even a real language. It's a made-up language to check for high, or let's say aptitude for language learning, which means you should be able to recognize certain patterns of language, be able to infer, how the grammar works and things like that. So you got to take this DLAB, this battery, this aptitude battery. If you pass, and depending on your score, then you can move into one of the classrooms, and then you can choose from one of, if I'm not mistaken, 17 or 18 languages plus dialects, right? The most popular dialects. But you can choose. It doesn't mean that you're going to learn those languages. So let me drink my tea and then tell you. If you got a really, really high score, you could learn a category 4 language, because the languages there are divided into 4 categories. And then I wrote this. When you access my text, you can read all of that. Category 1 and 2 languages, they take up to 36 weeks. 36 weeks, okay? And they are the ones that are typically more similar to English, right? If they are very similar to English, if they use the same alphabet, they have very similar grammar structure, then they can take around 24 weeks. So those are categories 1 and 2, right? Category 1, like 24, category 2, like 36, or something in between, right? If you have a category 3 language, then that takes about 48 weeks. So when you have a different alphabet, well, if you have a different alphabet, I think it goes under category 4. But if you have very difficult grammar, if you have cases, if you have very different vocabulary, then it's a category 3 language. It can take up to 48 weeks, okay? And then you're going like 48 weeks? Well, we can do that in a year, right? 48 weeks, we can do that in a year. Oh my God, yeah. And then if you think about category 4 languages, can take up to 64 weeks, okay? 64 weeks. And then under category 4, you have Farsi, you have Arabic, you have Korean, because not only are they completely different in terms of script, of the alphabet, but also the grammar is quite different. So does that mean that, and I'm looking at some of your comments here, right? I believe too much info at once does not mean they're going to be internalized. That's perfect, Tasia. Exactly, right? But here is the thing about this language institute, the Defense Language Institute, is that those people, the military, they are actually exposed to the language 5 hours a day. So they have 5 hours a day of instruction. I mean, in the classroom, they start at 8:30, they go up to, I don't know, like 3 p.m. or something like that, 3:30. And that doesn't even count homework. So I've been doing a lot of research about this, and they still have to do like 2 or 3 hours of homework every day. And they still have to be immersed in the language culturally. So culture is a major part of the process there. They have to listen to music from that country. They have to watch TV shows, series from that country. And and more, everything you can imagine. Every month, and that depends, but usually every month they have a very interesting immersive experience, which is basically they will have like a simulation, like a mock test, situation that they have to, I don't know, go to a bazaar or something like that, and negotiate, haggle, buy stuff and stuff like that, so that they can really feel what it is like to be in the country, actually talking to people. And then that beats the whole thing that I wanted to tell you before. There's a lot of input. Definitely, there is a lot of input. Some people who were interviewed, people who actually got through the process, so they managed to pass the D-Lab, the aptitude test, and started. They actually say something like the first month or so is dedicated to learning the alphabet and the sounds and things like that. And then the teachers start speaking in the language only, basically. And they don't really care. So it's quite scary. It's not something that anyone could do, to be very honest, because they say, well, read this passage in whatever language they're learning, like Arabic. Read the passage and then explain it to me using what you have learned. A lot of people cannot do that very well. They get incredibly frustrated. There's a lot of pressure. They have excellent teachers who are qualified. A lot of those teachers are actually native speakers. But what really makes them efficient is not that they're native speakers, but they are qualified. They have studied to be great teachers. And the whole thing is incredibly exclusive, so much that if you think about it, I don't think your student, the one who's looking for you to teach him or her in 1 month, can do it, right? What do you think? Huh? And there's a reason for that, folks. Tasia said something there. Paulus mentioned something in the chat. How much can we actually learn by being exposed to, if you think about this overload of information that you are in touch with for a very limited amount of time? How much can you actually internalize? And according to neuroscience, I'm sorry to tell you folks, but you cannot. There's something, we have known this for a very long time. It's called cognitive overload, right? So I've mentioned this. I always talk about cognitive overload. I'm sorry. Every episode I talk about cognitive overload. And it's crazy because it's one of the things that really makes a difference in education, in learning, in teaching, and we should know more about it. So whenever you are exposed to a lot of information in a very short period of time, you don't get really good at it because you need time to process, you need time to internalize that. And that time, the time that you need for that, this is part of something that we call long-term potentiation that is connected with consolidation, so memory consolidation. You need to repeat those things in meaningful ways. So there were a couple of theories. Even today, we talk about those theories, right? In second language acquisition, that I'm sure some of you have studied them, especially Krashen, right? So when you go back to Krashen and you learn about his hypothesis, remember, there is the comprehensible input hypothesis, which basically posits that I just have to be immersed in an environment where I am in contact with the target language, with the language that I'm trying to learn. And the language doesn't have to be at the level I am. It actually should be a little above the level. Remember that, right? So that I can internalize those things. So I just have to be around the language. I just have to passively receive the language so that I can become proficient in the language, so that I can acquire the language, right? And I don't know if you guys can hear, but there are a bunch of Vila supporters here. Vila is a soccer team here in Goiânia, and I think they're going nuts now. They're shouting, so there's a game, probably a game going on. Anyway, so if you receive a lot of input, comprehensible input according to Krashen, that's it, right? That's all you need to be able to learn or acquire a language. But then there are other theories. For those of you who remember your second language acquisition classes, remember Long? I don't know if you guys remember Long with the interaction hypothesis and Swang. Remember Swang with the output hypothesis? So basically, it's not just receiving a lot of language, receiving a lot of input through, again, listening, usually listening or reading, but it's more about interacting with people. So there's a social component or factor that we can never overlook. It has to be there, you know. So there's a very important, and this has to do with how humans learn, really. We are social beings, so we have to be around people to learn. But there's also the output hypothesis that, if translated into neuroscience or into, you know, how we can understand learning better, use it or lose it is the idea. Use it or lose it. So if you are receiving a lot of information, you're interacting with people. So the interaction itself makes you use the language in a productive way, like going to the gym, remember? So if you go to the gym and you do nothing in the gym, you just watch people doing stuff, you're not going, I mean, you can learn, sure, you can learn how to do what you have to do, the workout routine and whatever, but you're not going to get any results. So how is that intensive course structure? Do you just go there and you listen to your teacher speak all the time and you do a bunch of grammar activities all the time, but there's no interaction, there's no pair work, there's no group work? So how effective is it really? At the same time, usually those teachers are following a course book. And if they're following a course book, there are lots of words and grammar structures to be learned. And that's why usually there's a lot of cognitive overload going on there, because, you know, we're going to be here together, folks, for 5 hours. I'm going to give you, I don't know, lesson 1 and 2 and 3. And there's a bunch of new words that you have to learn. And basically, I'm just going to show you the words. We're going to read a text. We're going to listen to something. And then you have to do a fill in the gap activity. And how much time is actually used for you to speak with someone, for you to interact with someone, for you to produce the language. So you can take an intensive course, 30 days, and you can be exposed to a lot of words, a lot of grammar structures. But does that make you speak better, more fluently? It's a genuine question here, folks. Yeah, I don't know. Does it? Maybe not necessarily. And again, if you need time to consolidate memories, that means that you have to sleep. That means that you have to space out your studies. So whenever you get a lot of information from your teacher, from if you are watching a recorded course, it doesn't matter where you get that information from, the input, how much time do you need to actually be able to consolidate that so that it's readily available in your brain, in your cortex? So whenever you have to pull that information, you know, from your cortex, it's there for you. So does it make sense, folks? I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. Let me know in the chat box. I can see Doris is here. Homework is useful. Yes, Doris, definitely. But again, what kind of homework? If they just have to remember words and grammar, or if they have to, you know, test their listening skills, that's receptive, right? Comprehension. How much does that actually help them speak? Because normally the students who come to you and they want to, well, let's do an intensive course because I need to be able to speak English as quickly as possible. And that's what they want, right? They want to speak as quickly as possible. The skill that they want to develop when they are looking for you, especially because, you know, they're very busy. They've tried a million different courses. They've done a lot of different things, but they have never been able to, right? So they come to you desperate and they say, hey, I have 1 month to learn how to speak English. I have 2 months to learn how to speak English. but how much time is actually allocated to speaking? Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, Paulo, I'm a very experienced language learner. Every time I have a pause in my studies and then I restart, I feel much better. Exactly. So there is, well, I wouldn't say a fixed or adequate, or it's very hard to tell, but there's a time period in which we should not do anything. We just have to internalize the stuff that we have been exposed to so that we can learn better. And then there is a problem. If you want to go to the gym because you have, well, let's say you are a fighter. Let's say you were a Muay Thai fighter, okay, or something like that, and you're preparing for a huge competition or some, I don't know. But you could be a judo fighter, or you're preparing for the Olympics. I don't care. It doesn't matter which one. But if you have already developed certain basic skills or even intermediate skills because you've already trained them for a while, then we can go faster. Then we can actually have a more intensive type of experience because you kind of know your way around that, right? And you are committed. Usually you know how to work things out. And then I've seen a lot of fighters who need to lose weight very quickly because of their competition, right? So you have different levels, different categories. And for you to be able to fit in, right, you have to have a specific weight. Otherwise, you cannot fight in that category. So I've seen that. And trust me, those people, they can do it. They can do it really quickly, right? I mean, faster than anyone I know. It's not incredibly healthy, to be honest. And most importantly, it's not sustainable. Not sustainable. So they can do it in like a month, 2 months. They can lose weight. They can be ready for the fight. You know, the thing is, they are at a level of skills and competencies that allow them to do certain things. And they're usually very well, I would say, tutored or mentored by the trainer, the coach, the person who's actually helping them get there, right? And they have a medical team, you know, so there's a whole structure behind being able to do something like that. And as soon as the fight is over, and let's say they lose the fight and they go back into their old routine, they lose everything. I mean, all the progress that they made, they lose that, right? It's because it's not sustainable. And it's dangerous. It's too fast. They might get injured. A lot of bad things can happen. And the most important message here is that they have already been exposed to that. They have acquired certain skills that allow them to do that. What about that student of yours who has never learned English or has learned English a million years ago and thinks that they can very quickly, in a matter of weeks or months, actually move from A1 to, I don't know, C1, right? So there's a limit to how much they can use, or let's say how frequently they can use their productive skills. I mean, because they have not internalized a lot of vocabulary, a lot of grammar structures, then how much can they actually produce on a daily basis, right? They're very limited by the amount of language that they have. So if you have a certain amount of language that puts you up there, maybe intermediate or something like that, maybe you can go a little faster. But if you are constrained, or if you are not able to, let's say, fall back on, you know, your linguistic repertoire because you are at a basic level, then how fast can you actually internalize all of those things that you need so that you can become more productive? Right? Does that make sense? And then Tasia, yeah, that when we review the vocabulary items worked previously in the class, yeah, we get the chance to really make the language natural. Exactly. That's it, right? So if you review vocabulary that you taught yesterday, a couple of weeks ago, last week, how much of it will have been internalized by your students? How much of it will have become long-term memory? And if it hasn't become long-term memory, how can they use it to be productive? How can they actually draw on those things to produce language, to have pair work, a chat with their peers in the classroom, to write a paragraph using those items? If they haven't internalized those things, sure, they can open their books and get the language there and then write. But then, I'm telling you, at the end of the lesson, they might not even remember those words, because again, it's about memory consolidation. You need time to consolidate stuff in your brain. You can't speed up. Isn't there a song, Speed Up the Time? It's a good song from the 80s, I think, right? Anyway, you can't do it. So there is and we have to be very careful. There is a limit, and I think it's a very clear limit to how you can do something like that, And I think that in many regards, and I think, Rudy will not be able to make this episode, folks. Unfortunately, my good friend Rudy, maybe we'll do another episode like this, and then he will be the only one talking, so we can kind of, strike the balance here. So you can have a moment with Rudy. But yeah, unfortunately he wasn't able to come today because something happened. It's nothing serious. We took care of it. Everything is all right. We checked with him, but too bad he wasn't able to be here today. But what I was saying is there's a limit there for how much you can learn in a very short period of time, because your brain was not built that way. Even though, yes, there is some truth to Krashen's hypothesis, right? That if you receive a lot of input, you will soon be able to use that. Yes, if we watch a lot of TV and we learn different words from TV series and music and all of that, songs, sure, we might ascribe meaning to that or intentionality. And out of curiosity, we want to learn those words, and maybe we will. I had a lot of friends who learned English through music, but they were incredibly active and not passive. And again, when we're talking about receptive skills, we are usually talking about passive skills, right? When we're talking about productive skills, we are usually talking about active skills. So my friends who were able to learn English through contact with music, they only did that because they were very curious about the vocabulary, the language structure. So I would say that they would be the perfect candidates for the language, the Defense Language Institute, the Foreign Language Center, because they would probably have a high score if they took the DLAB, the Defense Language Aptitude Battery Test, right? Because they analyze the structure of languages like I did. I'm always curious about how languages work. I always want to know how you structure the grammar. I always want to know about idioms and expressions and things like that, because I think they're very telling. They really, I don't know, it's just my inner curiosity. When I'm teaching my Italian students English, I teach business English to Italian students, I always share a lot of cool things, that I think make sense in Portuguese, because, many times I want to explain something to them. They don't have the basis, they don't have the foundation to learn that. So I can do that in a very, let's say, deductive way. I can give them a very lengthy explanation, and that doesn't work very well. So I use their language, but I don't know Italian very well. I know some Italian. So sometimes I just guess, well, this might be similar to Portuguese, right? So I teach them something in Portuguese. I say, well, in Portuguese, we say like this. And then they go like, yeah, in Italian, we say the same thing. And then I always ask, how do you say this in Italian? How do you say? And then I tell them, how do you say this in Portuguese, right? So a lot of people have this natural curiosity for languages. They want to understand, they want to learn, they want to, pick up the language from whatever source they're in contact with. It could be the television, could be a YouTube channel, it could be TikTok, it could be songs, right? So those people might be more well, let's say better candidates for intensive courses. Yeah. But the truth is they will not be able to keep up for a very long time, usually, because one of the things that all those military people had, the ones who managed to pass the D lab, the battery, right, the aptitude battery, the ones who managed to get into the course, the ones who managed to stay in the course, because a lot of those people, they fail. They do fail. It's what, the failure rate is actually pretty high because they give up. They're not cut out for it, and then they have to give up. Or sometimes they have to drop out because they're told by their superiors, hey, this is not for you. We don't talk about that, right? But what makes some of them successful is they have aptitude for languages because they might be naturally curious about languages and how they work. And at the same time, they are incredibly disciplined because they are, well, guess what they do for a living, right? They're the military folks. Think about the hierarchy, right? Think about it. I mean, and there's an added pressure that we don't talk about is those people are learning a language to go on a mission somewhere, and how proficient they are will actually be the difference maybe between life and death, like whether they're able to communicate proficiently in this given, particular situation will mean that, well, they can accomplish the mission and save people and save themselves or not. So there's this type of pressure as well, right? So it's different. I mean, can your student, Maria or João, who wants to go to a conference in 2-3 months, do the same thing? Can they stop their lives completely to spend 5 hours every day in a classroom, receiving a lot of input, but also using the language a lot, plus 2-3 hours of homework every day for weeks? And even when people do that, it doesn't take only 6 weeks, folks. I mean, it takes minimum 24 weeks according to Category 1 languages, right? 24 weeks, 36 weeks. Category 2 languages, I mean, 48 weeks. Category 3 languages, 64 weeks. Category 4 languages. Korean takes about, I don't know, I think 63 weeks. Do you have that time? You have the time to dedicate to 5, 6, 7 hours a day? And there's something else. They are paid for that, right? People get paid. I mean, the military, they get paid. They have their salary to do that. Those guys, the people who come to us looking for a quick fix, a quick solution, they have to pay us, right? So how realistic is it really? I'm asking you. Let me know in the chat box. So what am I saying? Should we never offer intensive courses? Yes, let's offer intensive courses, but let's be very clear and transparent about them. Okay, maybe we'll be able to give you a boost, Maybe, let's say, okay, sure, you want to buy 30 hours from me and do all those 30 hours in a month. That's awesome. That's good for me. It's a great deal. It's maybe good for you. You have the time you want to dedicate, as long as that will take you to, well, the next step, right? Because what people do is they sign up for a 30-day intensive course and then they give up, they stop. And of course, they will not be able to learn as much as, they think they should. They will be able to learn, but it's hard to convince them. What might make a difference for those people is, can you somehow help them stay in touch with the language every day? Because that might make a difference. So I was talking to Paulo, who was here watching us. So let's say you were offering 1 hour every day. So you have a 1 hour class every day, and maybe that's the type of lesson that is interactive, live, so it's synchronous, so you can actually be there. It could be face to face, online, whatever, but it's synchronous, and you are actually interacting with them for 1 hour a day. So you have 5 hours a week. That's great, because then you have a lot of time. I mean, for one hour, you don't get exposed to too much language that will cause you some kind of cognitive overload. No. And if that in that 1 hour, you are actually encouraged to do a lot of speaking, productive language, right? That's great, even better, because you are in touch with the language frequently during the week. You are interacting with someone. If you're doing it, you and your teacher only, that's great, sure. If you have a classmate, that could be even better, because you have someone else to interact with, right? So, okay, but if you're doing 5 hours a day, 3 hours a day, and then that might not be sustainable unless you are one of those military people in Monterey, California, going to the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center. Then okay, because then your whole life became that. And I just wanted to tell you, and you will read all of that in my blog, okay? There was a guy, an Irish polyglot. I don't want to mention his name because, let me give you a task. You can find out his name. So he was a very popular guy a couple of years ago, and he wrote a lot of courses, like Fluent in 3 months or something like that. I used to like that guy very much. I actually used a bunch of his videos, even a TED Talk, to encourage my students. See, look at this guy. He became fluent in 3 months, and he would go to different places to study languages that are completely unrelated to the place. So he came to Brazil to learn Arabic. He went to California or somewhere to learn Mandarin, like to prove that you don't have to be in the country to learn the language. And he was successful. I mean, it looked like he was successful. He recorded a lot of videos, but he had to stop his entire life to do that. He had to have money to invest and actually come to the place. I mean, if he wanted to stay home, he could have done it. He did it at the beginning. He had to find someone to teach him, to have Skype conversations with. He bought a lot of vocabulary book, dictionaries, and he studied 2-3 hours a day, just that. And then he would join you what you would normally do in 2 weeks' time. You want to do that. Don't get frustrated when you realize that you can't go as fast as you had thought, because it simply doesn't work like that. And don't believe those people, those Instagram gurus, influencers, whatever, saying, hey, buy my course, you'll be fluent in 7 weeks, 8 weeks, or or a couple of months. Yeah, what is fluency, huh? So they say fluency, but are you going to be proficient? Are they the same thing? Are you going to get to a high level of linguistic competence? Or so you have to be very careful with those promises, okay, folks? So my final tip is, yes, you can enroll, you can start an intensive course. Make sure you have a qualified teacher if they are a private teacher. If you're going to an accredited institution, a language center, and also make sure that they are very transparent and they tell you, hey, this is what you will need to do. So this is only, to give you a boost, but you have to be here for a couple of years. If you want to get to the C2 level, it's going to take a couple of years, okay? And after you're done, you still have to keep using English. The right now is because I do it every day, because it's my work, it's my job. I do it, I teach, I train, because I'm using it every day. Just like the gym, you can't stop, right? You got to keep going to the gym or you got to practice sports or do something, even if you're doing on your own, but you have to keep doing it. It's not something that I'll do for some time. I have it and then it's there with me forever. Okay, folks? I hope everything made sense. Thank you very much. Rudy, no worries, my friend. I know you had something came up We were here for you. Next time, maybe you will come, and who knows, maybe you will be, I mean, of course you will alone, okay, talking to everybody here. Thank you very much, everyone. Make sure you follow us on social media. André Hedlund LS on Instagram. Make sure you follow Rudy Maciello, so Maciello Consultoria with double T double L, at Maciello Consultoria, Instagram. Make sure you follow Disal. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you send this link to someone who believes that they can, or even a year for that matter, you know. So you just share with them, and who knows, maybe they don't know English. Yeah, if you send them, I just realized because they don't know English, right? But nowadays they can actually click on closed caption and translate, you know, so the subtitles are there, so they can watch me and actually read subtitles in Portuguese. How about that? Technology does help sometimes, okay? Thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure. Have a wonderful night. See you around, and we'll let you know when we're doing the next episode of Chá Pedagógico. Send us some ideas, okay? How about that? Bye-bye, everyone. Is because I do it every day, because it's my work, it's my job. I do it, I teach, I train, because I'm using it every day. Just like the gym, you know, you can't stop, right? You got to keep going to the gym or you got to practice sports or do something, you know, even if you're doing on your own, but you have to keep doing it. It's not something that I'll do for some time. I have it and then it's there. Doing it. It's not something that I'll do for some time. I have it and then it's there with me forever. Okay, folks? I hope everything made sense. Thank you very much. Rudy, no worries, my friend. I know you had something came up. We were here for you. Next time, maybe you will come, and who knows, maybe you will be, I mean, of course you will alone, okay, talking to everybody here. Thank you. You will be, I mean, of course you will alone, okay, talking to everybody here. Thank you very much, everyone. Make sure you follow us on social media. André Hedlund